He said he just wanted to take some photos. Said I had a good back. 20 minutes later, I'm chained to a heater, and he's playing Exorcist 3 on repeat like it's a lullaby. His name? Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer. But to the rest of the world, he's just the guy who kept souvenirs with faces. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1991. Somewhere between loneliness and horror. That night, Milwaukee was wet. Rain came down in sheets, and neon signs blurred against puddles like spilled paint. Outside a local gay bar, a young man leaned against the brick wall. 25. Dancer's build, exhausted from performing. Cigarette dangling from his lips, not yet lit. Dahmer had been watching him for 20 minutes. Quietly, calmly, like a hunter with all the time in the world. He approached, offered beer, mentioned a camera. "You've got the kind of face I like to shoot," he might have said. The man smiled, flattered maybe, or just bored enough to follow a stranger into the dark. Jeffrey handed him a beer. He had already added something to it. Sleeping pills, twice the usual dose, not enough to kill. Just enough to erase resistance. The man drank, laughed, slouched. His words slowed, syllables sticking together like honey. Jeffrey stayed still, watching, waiting. The moment the body stopped fighting, gravity was always the moment the calm arrived. That strange silence before the storm. That final breath of control. He was 15 when the urges began, sexual fantasies wrapped in death and dominance, bodies that didn't talk back, images he couldn't pray away, no matter how many nights he spent locked in the bathroom, whispering into tile and steam. He once begged God to fix him. God didn't answer. The fantasies stayed. His first kill was in 1978. A hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They drank beer, talked about music. And when Stephen said he wanted to leave, Jeffrey picked up a barbell. It wasn't rage, it was fear. The fear of being left alone again. He crushed Stephen's skull, dismembered the body, hid the pieces under the house. Then he waited 9 years before killing again. But when he started back up, he didn't stop. The dancer's head now rested against the side of the couch. His beer had fallen. Foam dripped onto the floor. Jeffrey stood over him, breathing shallow. His hands didn't shake. They never did. He whispered something. He always did. A name, a sentence, a prayer. Maybe even, "Thank you." No one knew. And then, ritual. The camera flashed. Cuffs came out. The hammer waited, just off frame. Later that night, after the body was moved, after the blood was cleaned and the bones bagged for boiling, Jeffrey opened the fridge. He made room beside the frozen peas, a spot for the heart, another for the skull. He liked keeping them. Souvenirs. Proof that someone once stayed. "I didn't kill because I hated them," he would say years later in an interview. "I killed because I wanted them to never leave." Control was never about rage. It was about stillness. The body didn't feel like a body anymore. Once it stopped breathing, once the chest stopped rising, it became something else, something quiet, something that wouldn't leave. Jeffrey Dahmer moved with a strange calmness through his apartment. He wrapped the limbs in garbage bags, separating bone from muscle with almost surgical precision. The process was messy but never frantic. He had done this before. He had a rhythm now. First, the photographs, then the cleaning, then the freezer. In the corner of the room, a clock ticked loudly. He ignored it. Exorcist 3 played again on the TV, low volume, just enough to fill the silence. He liked it that way. Music made death feel cinematic, but The Exorcist, it made it sacred. Now he let the pills do the talking. The silence became his language. He didn't want anyone to respond, he just wanted to be close, without the threat of being rejected again. Years earlier, after his first murder, he had promised himself he'd never kill again. He had tried everything, enlisted in the army, worked in sandwich shops, even tried going sober. But nothing made the thoughts go away. They followed him like a second shadow. Quiet, patient, and cruel. By 19, the apartment had become a machine. Everything had its place. Sleeping pills in the cabinet, handcuffs in the drawer, Polaroids in a shoebox under the bed, and in the bedroom closet, his collection, wrapped in plastic, organized by shape. Bones, mostly, but sometimes organs. He had learned how to bleach skulls just enough to preserve the structure without losing the facial identity. He liked the heads best. They looked back at him, even when no one else would. He didn't think of them as trophies. Trophies were for athletes. These were companions. He placed one of the skulls on the edge of the table, sat across from it, poured a drink for himself and one for it. "You can sleep here," he whispered, not to the skull, to the memory it held. Sometimes, after everything was done, he'd sit in the corner of the room and imagine the body still there, whole, breathing, laughing maybe. He wasn't insane, he just hated goodbyes. This wasn't about death. It was about keeping things exactly how they were, forever. One night, weeks later, he brought home a boy no older than 19. Quiet type, shy. Said he worked at a diner. Jeffrey offered the usual beer, photos, sleep. But something changed. This one noticed the smell, asked too many questions, started fidgeting. Jeffrey's heart raced, but not out of fear. Excitement, challenge. He upped the dosage. 20 minutes later, the boy was on the floor, twitching, still conscious, eyes open. And that's when Jeffrey tried something new. He brought out the drill. He had read that if you drilled a small hole into the skull and poured in boiling water or acid, you could create a zombie. A body without a will, a shell. It didn't work. It never worked. But he kept trying because failure meant nothing. Failure still gave him a body. And bodies were better than loneliness. The apartment smelled like chemicals, a mixture of bleach, decay, and something else. Something that clung to the walls and lingered in the carpet. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't smell it anymore. He had stopped noticing a lot of things. Outside, Milwaukee carried on like nothing was wrong. People watered their plants. Kids laughed in parking lots. Buses hissed along the curbs. Inside apartment 213, time had frozen. At first, photographs were enough. Dozens of Polaroids, carefully composed. Some showed the men smiling. Some showed them dead. But photos faded. Bodies, if treated properly, didn't. The freezer became his archive. Carefully arranged, categorized. He didn't just toss things in. That would be sloppy. He had a method. The skulls were bleached and labeled. Hearts and biceps were wrapped in foil and placed in the back. Delicate hands were preserved in glass jars filled with formaldehyde. He lined them up on a shelf like they were collectibles. And in a way, they were. People frozen in time, just the way he wanted them. He'd open the freezer slowly, almost reverently. He didn't rush. He looked inside like someone peeking in on a sleeping child. "You stayed," he whispered more than once. It was his version of affection, a ritual of closeness. The living room table became an altar, 10 skulls arranged in a semicircle, all facing inward like they were having a quiet meeting. In the center, a black candle, a mirror, a single folding chair. He sat there often, talking aloud, not to the skulls themselves, but to what they represented. Echoes of connection, silence that couldn't leave. He never heard voices. He wasn't delusional, but he believed they listened. He told them about being 15 and realizing he was different, about holding a dead animal in the woods and feeling something he couldn't explain, about the years he spent trying to be normal and how exhausting that was. He confessed things he never said aloud to another living soul. "I tried to stop, I really did. It's worse when I don't do it. I don't hate them. I just need them. He planned the altar carefully. 10 skulls, not 9, not 11. He wanted them to feel complete. A circle of understanding, a place to breathe, drink, and forget what he'd done, if only for a few minutes. He didn't see death. He saw preservation, a way to hold on to what mattered. One night, he brought home a man who looked almost exactly like his high school crush. Same laugh, same slouched posture. Jeffrey didn't drug him right away. They ate takeout, listened to music, talked like real people. It felt close to normal. Then the pills, the cuffs, the freezer. Later, standing in the kitchen, Jeffrey looked down at the heart wrapped in foil. On the surface, he had written 2 words in Sharpie. For later. He didn't know if he meant to eat it. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it just felt safer having it close. He didn't kill for rage or pleasure. He killed to stop people from leaving, to freeze them in a moment where they could never walk out the door. He called it love. And in a way only he understood, it was. He once said, keeping their parts. It made me feel like they were part of me, that they couldn't leave, that I mattered to someone, even if they were already dead. He had tried not to cross that line. For years, he told himself there were limits. Photographs were one thing, bones were another. But this was different. And yet the thought had been growing inside him for months, quiet, steady, undeniable, like mold behind drywall. It didn't scream. It whispered if he could eat them, they'd be part of him forever. The night it happened, it was raining. Not a storm, just enough to make the windows fog. He had already killed the man. He didn't even remember the name. Only the smell of his shampoo. Only the way his chest had risen one last time and stopped. Jeffrey sat on the couch, staring at the body. He wasn't thinking about disposal. He was thinking about the heart. It looked so small. He removed it carefully, washed it under cold water, wrapped it in foil like he had done before, but this time he didn't put it in the freezer. He placed it on a plate. The stove clicked twice before the flame caught. He cooked it slowly, turning the piece with a fork like it was just another cut of meat. The smell was faint but sharp, metallic. When it was done, he sat down. No TV, no music, just the plate, the fork, and the thought that this might be the closest he'd ever come to love. He took one bite, chewed slowly, waited for guilt, for nausea, for the shame to crash over him like a wave. But nothing came. No horror, no remorse. Just quiet. He felt full, not just in his stomach, but in his chest, in his head. It was the first time in years he didn't feel empty. He wrapped the rest and placed it in the back of the fridge, behind a jug of orange juice, for later. He told himself it wasn't cannibalism, not really. It was communion, a way of staying close, a way of saying, "You're part of me now. You can never leave." Days passed. He didn't tell anyone. Of course not. But the idea stayed with him, grew stronger. He tried it again and again. Not every time, just the special ones, the ones who smiled, the ones who listened, the ones who reminded him of someone he once cared about. It never felt violent. It felt sacred, as if he was honoring them in the only way he knew how. He believed he was keeping their memory alive, that by consuming the parts he loved most, he was building something permanent. He didn't want to hurt them. He wanted to carry them with him, inside him, where no one could take them away. Later, he would say, "It wasn't the flesh I was after. It was the feeling, the closeness, like they were part of me, like they were safe." That was his version of intimacy, not conversation, not sex, just silence, stillness, and a shared body. He never felt more alone than the morning after. The food was gone, the fridge was cold, the apartment was still. He missed them already, he missed all of them, but he had their hearts. And for a man like Jeffrey Dahmer, that was enough. It should have ended differently. Jeffrey Dahmer had killed 17 men. He had boiled bones in his grandmother's basement, stored hearts beside condiments, tried to create zombies with drills and acid. And somehow, for 13 years, no one stopped him. The neighbors had complained about the smell, the strange sounds, the screams once, but the police never stayed long. He was polite, quiet, clean. Predators didn't look like him, and so he kept going. But everything breaks eventually, even silence. Tracy Edwards was different. He was older than most, stronger, sharper. Jeffrey had lured him home like the others. Beer, a few laughs, a promise of money and photos, the same script. But something went wrong. Jeffrey was off that night, nervous, unsettled. He played Exorcist 3 again, muttered to himself, kept disappearing into the back room. Tracy noticed the smell, the acid, the barrel. He saw the cuffs, and when Jeffrey pulled a knife, Tracy didn't freeze. He waited, planned, watched every move. And then, when the moment came, he hit him, ran, barefoot, cuffed, down the hallway, out the door, into the street, straight to the police. It was a warm July night. The streets buzzed with heat and noise. 2 officers followed Tracy back to the apartment. Apartment 213. They knocked. Jeffrey opened the door. He didn't run, didn't argue, didn't lie. He just stepped aside, like he had been waiting for this moment, like part of him wanted to be caught. Inside, the air was thick. One officer noticed the photographs first. Dozens of Polaroids, some fresh, some old, all graphic, all real. Another opened the fridge. Inside, a head, wrapped in plastic, eyes still intact. And then the drawer, full of bones, and the closet, with skulls, perfectly lined, perfectly still. They handcuffed Jeffrey Dahmer. He didn't resist, didn't blink, just stared at the floor and said, "For what I did, I should be dead." They took him away, and the building went silent again. Except now, the silence had witnesses. In the days that followed, the story exploded. Newspapers printed his face. TV anchors stammered through details. Reporters tried to explain the unexplainable. The city of Milwaukee reeled. People asked how it had gone unnoticed for so long, how 17 men had vanished and no one had connected the dots. The answers never satisfied, not really, because the truth was hard to face. They didn't see him because they didn't want to. In jail, Jeffrey talked freely, too freely. He explained everything. The rituals, the freezer, the meals. He didn't cry, didn't laugh. He just told the truth, like it was someone else's story, like he was the narrator, not the villain. He was sentenced to 999 years, a number so big it felt made up. But the silence followed him. And in 1994, it caught up. Another inmate took a metal bar to his head in the prison bathroom. When the guards found him, he was lying on the floor, bleeding from the mouth, still breathing. Barely. He died later that day. Just another body on a cold metal table. Except this time, no one wanted to keep it. Some say he got what he deserved. Others say he should have suffered longer. But the question still hangs in the air years later. How did it go on for so long? And if no one had knocked that night, if Tracy Edwards hadn't run, how many more would there have been? Jeffrey Dahmer once said, "If I'd been stopped earlier, none of this would have happened." And that may be the only honest thing he ever said. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.